This video contains audio description. The content is presented by Yetnebash Nugusi Mola, UNICEF Disability Specialist. Photographs of children with disabilities from around the world. Disability Inclusion Training. Module 3, The Rights-Based Approach.
Different people from different cultures or countries, or even from within the same country, have different understandings of what disability actually is. It's really important to understand some of the more common ways that people think about disability so that we can understand how to best ensure equal rights for persons with disabilities. Disability has often been seen as a charity issue where persons with disabilities are seen as victims who need help. Some people believe that disabilities are a result of a curse that is often related to a religious belief.
Iman, 19, from Jordan.
There are villages where people's thinking is a little misguided. For instance, that disability was the result of the parent doing something bad, or maybe it was black magic.
Disability has also often been seen as a medical issue where a person just needs to be fixed by a cure or a doctor in order to take part in society. In the last few decades, the perception of disability has dramatically changed with a new social and human rights understanding of disability. In fact, in 2006, countries around the world came together to adopt this new understanding of disability in the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, or CRPD. This human rights approach in the CRPD sees disability as a result of barriers that exist in society. Think of it this way. I don't have a disability because I'm blind. I experience disability when materials aren't created in Braille, or when I am not provided with assistive technology, or when people make negative assumptions about my capability to do something. It's society's response to a person with an impairment that makes that person experience disability. The important thing here is to understand that disability is not only about people's impairments. A person experiences disability when they meet barriers in society. And they're not just in the physical environment, like stairs, that would make it hard if you use a wheelchair.
Marcelina, 23, from Samoa, speaks in Samoan Sign Language.
I never watch TV. I use my phone to watch any visual media. The reason for this is that there are no interpreters, captions, or accessibility features on TV.
Imagine you're watching a foreign movie in a language that you don't understand. Now, imagine there were no subtitles. That would be a barrier to understanding the movie. Persons with disabilities encounter barriers like that all the time. But perhaps the biggest barrier of all is actually attitudes and assumptions about what persons with disabilities can or cannot do.
Maria, 21, from Bulgaria.
Majority of my teachers in high school chose to believe that I wouldn't amount to anything, and they reinforced the belief among my fellow peers.
The most revolutionary thing about the human rights approach to disability in the CRPD is that it doesn't ask persons with disabilities to change the way they are. Instead, it asks how should society change? How can society remove the barriers that are stopping persons with disabilities? How can we make our buildings, playgrounds, and public places accessible to all people and communicate in ways that everyone can understand? How can we promote positive attitudes and make sure that policies and laws support persons with disabilities? What we must do is work together to dismantle these barriers and not build new ones. Whether the barrier is attitudes, stairs, or institutional barriers that you might find in schools, hospitals, or emergency response services that don't let persons with disabilities have access.
Mark, 24, from Uganda, speaks in Ugandan Sign Language.
If all barriers are removed, we would all enjoy universal access. Everything would be very easy. All infrastructure would be disability friendly because we would all be at the same pace, at the same level.
Every person has the right to live the life they imagine for themselves. Persons with disabilities are no different. This idea that all people have the same rights and should be able to contribute to their community was included in the CRPD and is called the human rights approach. The human rights approach calls on society to make sure that persons with disabilities are heard and empowered to take part in all decisions related to their lives.
Brian, 30, from Peru.
For me, a human rights approach means that everyone is afforded the same rights and no one is left behind. For example, the right to an education in regular schools with the same opportunities as their peers.
So, what can you do to uphold the human rights approach? Sometimes all you have to do is ask. Start a conversation with persons with disabilities in your community or those accessing your services. Ask them what barriers they are facing and what can be done to address them. Talk to families about their children's support needs. Pass this information on to people who can make changes in how services are delivered. But make sure to also include persons with disabilities in this process. By involving persons with disabilities, you also empower them to take part in decision making. Work with organizations or groups of persons with disabilities to understand their priorities or any concerns they have about how public services are delivered. Write a plan to remove barriers in your workplace and carry it out. This is how human rights approach can happen in a small classroom or a community. You can help people in your workplace to change their behaviors or attitudes towards a disability. Speak up when you see a way to remove a barrier for someone with a disability. Share examples of good practice with your colleagues to show them that inclusion is possible.
Yusra Hakawati, Mercy Corps, Jordan. Ahmad, 16, rides his tricycle.
Ahmad used to only participate in class orally or sometimes raising a card. But Ahmad said he wanted to find a way to take notes in class and to do his assignments at home. At first, we tried to modify the pen to make it easier for Ahmad to use, but his physical disability made that impossible. So then we decided to use the tablet. And he liked this idea a lot. He practiced at home a lot so he could do it in class.
Ahmad types on his tablet using his toes.
It's up to all of us to change the environment we live in so that it fully includes everyone. The human rights approach empowers persons with disabilities to be active in society, making their own decisions and accessing all the services they require. By changing the way we think about disability, by creating space for persons with disabilities to participate and contribute to how services are delivered, and by identifying and removing physical, information communication, and attitudinal barriers, together we can uphold the principles of the CRPD and build a world that's truly inclusive and accessible for all members of the community.
UNICEF, for every child, with technical support from CBM Global Disability Inclusion, with thanks to NORAD, Norwegian Agency for Development Cooperation. Video production by Highway Child.